Hello everyone, welcome to The Good, The Bad, The TNA Impact for Impact Wrestling, January 19th, 2012, and I'm going to go off and say at the beginning here, I didn't personally think it was all that great of a show, and this is probably also mostly because the fact that some of the storylines that I see going on, I just don't like or am completely disinterested in. And honestly, I'll go off and I'll start with what I felt was, pretty decent. And you had a couple good matches. Unfortunately, one ends with a DQ, which leads into a storyline that I personally don't like. The other good match of the night was, Mickie James and Madison Rayne, their cage match that they had. It was a lengthy match, quite unusual that you would see in the Knockouts division or pretty much any of the women's divisions of other companies. And pretty much, I felt like it was an overall solid match. The only problem was that they didn't really use the cage all that often, and that's always a down point for me when you put the cage in there and maybe they get thrown against it once or twice, and it's pretty much that's all they use the cage for, outside of maybe keeping out outside interference, and that's pretty much all it was there for this time around. But all in all, I feel like it works out well for the #1 contenders match the next week, and obviously building into one more match with Gail Kim for Mickie James. So it was one aspect that I did actually like about the show. Another aspect that I liked about the show was the whole Samoa Joe and Magnus staying as a tag team. I'm glad they're keeping them as a tag team. I'm glad it wasn't a one-off thing that they were doing just for the wild card tournament. They seem to work well together, and this week again they let them go over pretty much over the tag team champions with Crimson and Matt Morgan. Now granted, Magnus didn't win his match against Crimson, but the post-match beatdown, gives them a legitimate threat to those tag team titles. And honestly, that's pretty much all they're going for. I mean, eventually they're going to have to pull off something, whether they be in a six-man or, one of them beats Matt Morgan, because they're obviously not going to end Crimson's undefeated streak, so one of them is probably going to end up beating Matt Morgan and give that full-on legitimate threat to those tag team titles in the terms of the storyline. So that was another aspect that I liked. The aspects that I really didn't care for. Well, of course, the Eric Young thing. Honestly, I think a lot of the comedy skits, though, you do actually need a comedy skit, and Eric Young's not that bad. It's just kind of gotten old right about now. Now the whole throwing in there with ODB and everything, it does freshen it up a little bit, but I'm obviously not liking it. They build the match for They build the match for him versus Angelina Love. Obviously the match is not going to happen because everybody who pretty much watches Impact knows Spike TV does not allow violence, man against female, and pretty much TNA doesn't really care for it much either. And so you knew the match wasn't going to happen, so Eric Young does his typical comedy bits, gets a low blow, and it was pretty much a waste of time. And honestly, I just felt like you didn't really get too much out of most of the show. Like I said, there were a lot of matches in this one where it ended in DQ or it ended in an interference of some kind. I'll go off and give at least two more areas that I did like. The first one I liked was Austin Aries coming out, the X Division champion, and he started talking up, there's no one left. This led into the return of Alex Shelley, and honestly, glad to see Alex Shelley back. And it looks like they're going to lead into a feud with him versus Austin Aries, and eventually will lead into the X Division Championship match. And I honestly do like that. I think they can tear the house down. They're both well on the mic. They can pull a feud out of that. And of course, they're both extremely good in the ring. So that's definitely one aspect of the show that I fully did like. And like I said, great to see Alex Shelley back, but that was just a talking segment, and it was obviously the start of a feud. The last bit that I ended out actually somewhat liking, somewhat disliking. And I know it seems like I'm liking a few more things than I'm disliking, but this is where I felt like the show lacked, because there was a lot to this going into the night. And it began at the beginning with of the show with James Storm coming out talking about #1 contendership. Jeff Hardy comes out saying, he needs one more shot. Bobby Roode trying to get out of the match with either one of them. Sting says, okay, we're going to do one more #1 contenders match with Jeff Hardy and James Storm. And, winner gets Bobby Roode type deal. Okay, that's fine. It's like, okay, this should be a good match. It's not, it won't be bad. It is two faces, but that doesn't mean it's going to be, overly bad, which we've seen in the past. So the match itself, it was a great, entertaining match to watch, and everything was going. In my mind, I felt like the next feud for Bobby Roode should not lead to any kind of triple threat. And this is obviously going to happen because of the DQ finish, the no contest finish. Bully Ray comes out, knocks out both James Storm, Jeff Hardy, the referees. This led Sting coming out there, and then Bobby Roode getting the last little tidbit on both of them. And obviously this is going to a triple threat area. Honestly, I felt like they should get this Jeff Hardy thing done with Bobby Roode now, and lead this into James Storm. Now, the only good tidbit that should be going on with this is that James Storm will eventually get his one-on-one feud. They'll get their one-on-one storyline, and I think that's going to be a much more entertaining storyline than the one with Jeff Hardy. And maybe this will lead to maybe more of a culmination at the TNA Lockdown pay-per-view, or a little bit past it in the upcoming months. But honestly, I don't feel like this needs to be into a triple threat area. We've seen it a couple times before. Now, granted, all the matches ended in DQ and everything, but I don't think Jeff Hardy needs to be there in the main event spot going for the title ever on this aspect. I don't like the triple threat idea, especially for main eventing pay-per-view. And usually, I feel the one-on-one title matches are a little bit better. The triple threat title matches, yes, they do work, and they can be really, really good, and the feud between all three of them can be really good. But usually this is bringing it. But usually when you see a triple threat for the titles, or for any of the titles going there, you have two guys who absolutely hate the champion, and it leads into a very predictable ending. Obviously, Bobby Roode is going to find a way to win the match. He's going to get beat down and then eventually find a way to win. It's pretty much going to be a typical ending in my view for that portion of the storyline, because you have Jeff Hardy, who has no beef with James Storm, and you have James Storm, who has no beef with Jeff Hardy, but they have the beef with Bobby Roode. I don't like where the storyline's going, and that's where I felt like the show is lacking. They're trying to build it as, I think they're trying to build it as an eventual triple threat. I don't like the actual triple threat aspect to it. I feel this should be a one-on-one area. The only thing that I can see that could potentially save this storyline is throwing Bully Ray into this title match, maybe make it a fatal four-way, or just do a tag team match at the pay-per-view. That's all that I really fully can see that could save this kind of storyline. Otherwise, I'm not liking it. Like I said, this is the reason why I felt the show was lacking, was mainly because of this storyline. Your world title storyline should be the main focal point of the show. It definitely was, and I felt it was a very lacking storyline going into the next pay-per-view. So that's pretty much all I got to say on this week's Impact. Once again, take them with a grain of salt. These are my own personal opinions, and I thank you guys for watching.